The way you go to the Jupyter Lab is Analyze Data, Jupyter Lab. And if you click it, then it brings you over here. It has a small description of how this works. There's also a tutorial video. And then you just click Access Jupyter Lab here. And access Jupyter Lab again. I don't know why this is so complicated. And now it's going to check whether you are human. And if it finds you a human, then it's going to let you in. Oh yeah, here you can select the size of the virtual machine. So this is the point where somewhere in the ESA Cloudflare cloud, you get a dedicated virtual machine with a dedicated RAM and memory and a dedicated storage space. So this is your own virtual machine for free that you can start working with. Anything you store in here is going to be there for a month. If you change something, then this time is calculated again. But if you don't touch it for 30 days, then you get the notification and it's just there. And here you are. Might take a bit of a while to start up. Sometimes if you refresh this, then... Okay, here we go. These are the two folders you see. My storage is where you can store stuff for yourself. So you can create files in here. You can save your personal notebooks or datasets in here. And then this is the folder with sample notebooks. So the ones in here are updated through pull requests from GitHub. And so these will be updated automatically, and you shouldn't change them. Or at least, if you change them, they will still revert to the original version. Okay. So the notebook we will be working with for the next hour or so is in Samples, Sentinel Hub, and the name is From Browser to Jupyter. And when everybody has opened up this notebook, I can tell you a little bit more about how Jupyter works, and then we can get coding. An interface for working with code. It's a web-based system that allows you to create regular text in Markdown that you can format, but also code and graphics. And the nice thing is that you can change the graphics based on your code. You can create images that are the product of the code that you build. And then when you change the code, the image is going to change. So this way you can test your code. You can develop different alternatives. You can also create charts or graphs, which are based on the calculations that you do in the notebook. And so in this way, you can the Markdown part is going to explain what we do, including the images. And then there are boxes of code where we change the code or we edit it. And some of this is going to connect to the images. So if you just scroll in, for a long time, you will just see text like on a website, on an HTML website. But then further down, you will find modules of code. This is what they look like, right? So a gray background and an empty set of brackets beside them. So if you click in one of these blocks of code, they're called cells, and you either hit the run button or just type Shift-Enter. Then this cell is going to run. You see a little star here while it is running, and then a number when the running is finished. So it's possible to run this notebook one cell after the other, and this is how we regularly progress through a Jupyter Notebook. But this was just to explain to you how the system works. We go back to the very beginning, and then we can work our way individually through this notebook. And a lot of this is going to be familiar, right? So our use case is mapping wildfires. We want to quantify the extent of wildfire damage, ideally in a graphical form, looking at the change in wildfire damage area. So all this starts with looking at the wildfire. If you go to step 1 here, there's a link, right? This is an image of what you're going to see in Copernicus Browser, but if you click the link, then it's going to take you straight to the browser to a location in northeastern Canada where we have a fire. Okay, so now you know all about satellite image interpretation. This is a true color image. If you want to see the fire itself, what would be the visualization to use? Shortwave infrared, exactly. From these, if you just click on it, you will see the fire, right? And you also see the burnt area because it emits differently in shortwave infrared. So this is essentially the property of burnt areas that we are going to use in this notebook. Okay, on we go. This is just a screenshot of the same thing. And then you can experiment with the composite tool as well. We haven't really used this, but there's this drag and drop tool. Here are Sentinel-2 bands. And if you just drag them onto the red, green, blue, then you can get all sorts of weird visualizations. This is something to play around with. You can also test the very same combination that you have with the shortwave infrared, which is 12, 8, and 4. So if we go back to custom and we do 12, 8, 4, we exactly get the shortwave visualization. And if you go to custom script, then you see the same thing in code, right? We have the setup function for the input bands. We have the output, which is a 4-band output for red, green, blue, and transparency. And then we have the evaluate pixel function, which just applies a scaling factor of 2.5 and uses the bands. Right? This is nothing new. We've already done this in the custom scripts. Okay, back to the notebook. This is a custom script. If you just click here on the blue link again, so the burnt area visualization custom script, it's going to take you straight to the custom scripts repo page where this script is introduced. You can see there's a bit of an explanation of how it works. So it takes the bands 12, 11, and 8. And then it has a small decision tree. And that's what we use to find the burnt area. We are introducing these indices, NDWI for water, NDVI for vegetation, and this little shortwave infrared index. Looking at the difference between band 12 and band 11, and then dividing that by band 11, band 12, and band 8. So the sum of the near and shortwave infrared. And then this is an if query, right? And the two vertical lines, they mean or. So if this index is above the threshold or that index above another one, band 2 or band 11 or band 3, then we return this. Otherwise, we return 110. Now let's start by understanding this. What does this mean? Return 110 samples data mask. What is the pixel going to look like if this is the result of the query? Red, very good, yes. It's 1 in red, and it's not transparent, and everything else is 0. And what's it going to look like if this condition is fulfilled? True color, very good, exactly, right? So what we are doing is, if this condition is fulfilled, and then we assume it's not a burnt area, and we just visualize it in true color. If it's not fulfilled, if one of these conditions is not right, then we assume it's a burnt area, and then we show it in red. So now, if we just go back to our Jupyter Notebook, here again we are explaining this script with the little decision tree, and you can apply this script, copy it out from here, and put it back into the browser. And here's your burnt area. Okay, once more slowly. This is where you copy the full text of the script. And then if I go back to Copernicus Browser, and I select custom and custom script for the visualization, I get this little window. I select everything using Control A, and then I can paste my script in. Now we can see that the script is not really perfect. It's not perfectly catching the burnt areas. A lot of it remains gray or black. This is partly because of the cloud cover, but partly because the script is not a perfect script. We can try fine-tuning some of these thresholds. So in the decision tree, we have these numbers here. And maybe if we change one of them, then it's going to get better. You can actually play around with this. Is this going to improve? No, it didn't. I raised this from 0.1 to 0.12. Now I'm reducing it to 0.08. Now it's looking better, right? So this is how you can tune a custom script if you need to. And then you can create a burnt area visualization in the custom script domain. Can we calculate the area of the custom script of the burnt area from this? Yes and no, not really, because if I create an area, I could look at the histogram, right? And this would give me the ratio of burnt and not burnt area. But the problem is that the script is only outputting the default output, so the visualized output. It's not creating an index output, a quantitative output for the histogram. We could change that. Actually, we could even try. No, let's move on with the notebook, and then we can look at this later if we're finished. Okay. So now we're moving on to a new study area, looking at burnt areas. If you just scroll further down from this cell to where you have this big red map of the wildfire area in Greece, then you have this link to another Copernicus Browser scene. Just open it up. And here we are in eastern Greece. And we have a lot of burnt area, right? Now try and take a look at the time series and tell me when the fire happened. Give me a date. This is the middle of September. So when did the fire start? June? Did somebody say June? Okay. June when? Which date in June? 5th? You see. Well, yeah, no burnt area here. Let's look at the 19th of August. 18th of August, not much. 23rd of August, already a lot of burnt area. Yeah. Oh, yes, it's cloudy, but we already have a fire. Yes. Yes, it started somewhere between the 19th and the 20th, probably. We can already take a look at this. If you want, you can take the wildfire visualization custom script. So not the burnt area, but the wildfire one from the custom script repo. And then we can take a look again. We can actually do this. So is this it? No, it's a different one. Sentinel 2, disaster management custom script, wildfire visualization. Copernicus Browser. And now I'm copying the script and I'm putting it into the visualization here again. And see, here's our fire. Shall I show you the script again? It's this one, wildfire visualization. Okay, so now we know a bit about the story of this fire. We know approximately when it started. And then we can create some sort of time series to track the burned area. I think you must have taken the EO browser script. We want the Copernicus browser version. because the EO browser is the default one, unfortunately, still. Okay, everybody's seeing the fire? Okay, now we go back to the notebook. So we are in this part, right? We have checked the wildfire custom script, the burnt area custom script. We have looked at the image of how it looks like in Canada, and we have this image of how it looks like in Greece. Now, if we go back to the Copernicus browser scene for Greece using this link, the one between the two images, and open up the code, then we see something special here. So in the setup function, we are defining the input bands, and we are defining the output products. And this is our default output product, which is the visualization, right? It's called default, and it has 4 bands. And now we have another output product, which is called burn mask. And this one is an 8-bit integer, and it has 1 band. Okay, so we are not going to visualize this. We are not going to color this. We are going to use it to create a quantitative map. How do we define the value of this burn mask? We have the little decision tree here, and we say, if these conditions are fulfilled, we return a true color image with the visible bands, and we return the burn mask with the value of 0, right? Because it's not a burnt area. If this condition is not fulfilled, then we return red for the default visualization, and we also return 1 for the variable called burn mask. Okay, this is a bit of a hack to the custom script. Now we are having 2 separate outputs. One is the visualization, and the other is a quantitative output that we can work with later. Okay, we close this back. So now we are moving on to requests builder. This is our graphical interface for actually creating API requests. You remember what API requests are for? This is where you tell the computer what kind of data you actually want to work with. You can filter the data based on your area of interest. You can filter it based on data quality, and you can do a processing operation to give you exactly the data you want, whether it's going to be a raster or a statistical output. So now we have to go to request builder, which is, this URL is not directly in the notebook, so I have to wait for all of you to type it in. It's the correct one. Yes, it is. shapps.dataspace.copernicus.eu/requests-builder. First of all, we have a list of APIs. You now know what each API is for. A catalog API is giving you a list of data sets. A process API is giving you a raster. Statistical API is giving you a quantitative output like a graph. OGC services are for creating a WMS or for loading something in QGIS. And then the batch process and the batch statistical API are tools that you use if you want to work with very large areas. So right now we are just working with the process API. How does an API request work? You select a data set. You select an area of interest. You define the output parameters. And you define the evalscript, the custom script. Right? So what we have right now as a default, the area of interest is a place in Rome. We provided it with the coordinates here, right? The collection we are using is Sentinel-2 L2A. The output is 512 by 343 pixels. It's a JPEG. And it's a true color image, right? The input is band 2, 3, and 4. And the output is just scaled by 2.5. So if we just run this request, you say send request, then you will be asked to name the request. Collection. You can save this request, the code part of it. And now if you just click download here, you're getting a Sentinel-2 image of. But if I click add to map, Why is it white? Ah, maybe it's cloudy. Let's go. If we go back to the notebook is going to tell you everything to do in Request Builder. So this is just an image of Request Builder. You scroll further down, and here are the parameters, right? The data collection, the time range, the area of interest, and the evalscript. So let's go and set these parameters. The data collection is staying Sentinel to L2A. The time range is from the 12th to the 13th of September. This is the last date where we are interested in the time series of the wildfire. So I'm checking that it's Sentinel to L2A, yes. 2023, September 12. The 13. Okay, this is my data source. And now you can just copy the area of interest also from the notebook. Let's see a couple of those. See, the area of interest is just here in the notebook as a set of coordinates, a bounding box. Can everybody find it? Yeah? Yes? No? No? I'm coming. So you copy it, you put it into Request Builder here, and then you say parse, and you should be in Greece. So now back to the notebook. This is the evalscript once more. It's the same script that we used in the browser, but not the same script that you get in the repository, because it has the extra output thing here. Oh, I have to stop editing. So this is the script here. Like this. I copy it over here, just like you would do for the browser. So if you double click on the cell, then it goes into edit mode. And then if you run Shift Enter and you run the cell, then for Markdown, if you run it, it's going to be visualized again with the formatting. Okay, so now what we have in the Request Builder is the date, the location, and the eval script. So what else do we need for an API request? We also have to specify the output. What should be the product of this request, of the code that we run? Again, you have the guidelines here. You have to select the resolution in meters to 40 and the image format to TIFF, and the identifier is going to be the default. So we go up here. From height, width, we change to resolution, right? And we set it to 40 meters. Why are we doing this? We are doing this because a single process API request has a limitation in the number of pixels. A single request is typically 2,500 by 2,500 pixels. If you want something larger than this, then you have to do some tricks. So since this is a larger area, we are just downsampling the resolution, and then we are getting less pixels for the same size of area. Okay? And we change the image format to TIFF because we are going to work quantitatively with the data. Okay, so far so good. If we run this request, we are going to get a true color, red, green, blue image with the burnt areas highlighted in red. But we want something more. We also want to create a map of the burnt area, even a time series. So we are going to add another output, right? Here. This is also going to be a TIFF, but what's the identifier? What's the name of the output? It is, I copied the wrong script. It's this one, it's burn mask, right? We want to use the burn mask output from the custom script in the API request to also create a map of zeros and ones, 0 where it's not burned and 1 where it's burned. Correct the evalscript with a good one, right? So I have two outputs here, one called default. I'm sending that output to a TIFF. And I have this other output called burn mask, which I am also sending to a different TIFF. And then I'm going to have two outputs. Take care about the capitalization because the name of the output is burn mask, so it's a capital M in the middle. Okay, and now the fancy thing with Request Builder is that it's going to write your code for you, depending on the language you want. We want Python requests instead of curl. And then this is actually the code. We are going to go through it in a moment. Okay, so change that to Python requests. So everybody has two outputs, default and burn mask. And you have the code in Python requests. Yeah? So this is the way a request builder, an API request looks like. This is the authorization for your user signature. This is the data we want to work with. It's a bounding box, a time range, a data type. And now here we have defined the output based on the number of pixels. We are creating two outputs. Both of them are tips. One is called default. The other is burn mask. And this is the evalscript, which we are running as part of the request. It's now changed to be one long string. But you see, these are the line breaks. So it's the same evalscript that you have created here. This is what we are passing on to the server to run our API request. And then we are going to get some data. Right? Now we can say send request. Yes, it is. So this is okay, we're saving the requests for now. And you can download the response. And what you see is this is a tar file. Inside this compressed file, we have two images. One is called burn mask and the other is called default. If you have QGIS or some sort of GIS software on your laptop, then download it and open it, and you will see that one of them is a true color image, and the other is a black and white image with white for the burnt area and black for everywhere else. So now, if you would want to download the product of your API request, already we are not downloading a Sentinel-2 time. We are not downloading every Sentinel-2 band. We are just downloading the product, right? The visualization and the burn mask. And then from this, you could be able to create a time series in some GIS software, and then you would have the result. What you would have to do is to change the request here to a different date, right? If we want another image from September the 7th, we change this to 7 to 8. So the date goes from is September the 7th, to is September the 8th. And then we send the request again. And now we are going to get another tar file with the image from the September the 8th. And we would do this one by one for every date, and then we could create the time series in some sort of GIS software. So Request Builder is handling the API request for you, but then it's not doing any calculations further. So this is what Request Builder is for. But now we forget Request Builder because we are going to work directly in Jupyter. Okay, you could do the dates with these time series, but now we are going to work with the Jupyter Notebook. Somebody from the online community had a question about whether you can create a Request Builder request using a complex polygon and not just a bounding box. So we actually tested, and the answer is, of course, yes. So I just created this little boundary here in the browser. I exported it here to the clipboard. I pasted it in the request builder as a JSON, and that works as well. So then your request will only run for that area. You're only getting the pixels of this place, and that's going to work. I have to disappoint you for a moment because we have to go back to the dashboard. On the dataspace main page, once more, we open up the Sentinel Hub Dashboard. Okay, we've done this before for the configurations. Now we are doing it again for the authorization clients. So this is the dashboard. And now you go to user settings. There's different ways to handle your identity or your credentials, like a login and a password, or a piece of code that's unique to you. And one way is this OAuth client, where you get 2 text strings, and then you can use that to go through the API and verify that it's you. So this is what you do. Everybody will have to do this to run the code. So you go to the dashboard, user settings, and then you want to create a new OAuth client. You click create. You give it a name. You can set the expiry date. Normally it's 90 days, but you can give it a shorter one or a longer one. Actually, I can make this one to expire tomorrow, and then nobody is going to use my credentials. And now this is what you see. You have to copy these lines, these numbers, to a place where you can find them. Either make a small notepad text file on your desktop, or if you have a separate place where you are taking your notes, you have to paste them in there. But you will definitely have to be able to find these on your computer. So I'm just copying it to Notepad, like this. Okay? You have to make these notes somehow. I'm going to save this to the desktop, just to make sure I can find it. So the first thing we do is importing dependencies. Dependencies are software libraries that you sort of install on your local virtual machine, and then your Jupyter processes can work with them. So this is a client for the authentication. These are the Sentinel Hub libraries. This is Matplotlib, which we use to create visualizations. This is NumPy, which is a generic Python library for mathematics. And then this one is for handling zipped files. And this is another thing for just creating a little interface for the password. So the only one which is sort of specific to Earth observation right now is Sentinel Hub. Everything else is just generic Python stuff that most Python developers would know, even if they don't work with remote sensing. So how do we run the cell? Shift-Enter. And now the number has changed. And now comes the exciting part. So if you already have a login configuration, then you could just run this cell, but now we have to change it a bit. These 2 lines are commented out, right? So we have to uncomment them by deleting this little hashtag. And we are also uncommenting the one which is saving the configuration called CDSE. Right? So this is what your cell has to look like. So from this, you delete the space and the hash. And then this is what your cell is going to look like. Right? This is the prompt. It says, enter Sentinel Hub client ID. And so you take your little saved text file, and you copy the client ID. If you are using OAuth for authorization, then you use the client ID and the client secret. If you use a different way, then you can create separate clients with other tools, or you can go directly. So here you go, client ID. You enter it. Then you're prompted for the client secret. So these 2 together, they are your way of authorization. Okay, now we are good. So now we have entered our credentials. Now we create this authorization token session, which is what we use the OAuth lib for. You don't have to understand much about what is happening here. You just run this cell. But if you are creating a notebook for yourself, then you have to include these 2 cells for the login and the authorization. Okay, so this runs. And now we start working. So remember when we were searching for the date of the fire, what we found was It started sometime in mid-August, and then it sort of ended mid-September. And so we are creating new variables, defining these time slots, which we will then look at one by one. So the first one is before the fire, and then the next one is during, and the final one is after it. And so for these time slots, we will investigate the satellite images. So we just define this variable. So slots is this. If you just run this cell, it's going to print time slots and the list of the time slots. Okay, now we are defining a new variable. This variable is called evalscript. So we are building our API request. We are slowly telling the server what to do. And since it's going to run the evalscript on the client side or on the server side in the cloud, we can set this evalscript up. Again, it has the structure you already know. It has the setup. It's creating the default output, and it's also creating the burn mask output. These are the outputs which we are going to use in the processing afterwards. So we run this cell. It runs very fast because we are not actually processing any data yet. We are just creating the variable which is called evalscript. So we create the time slots, we create the evalscript. Okay, didn't run. Yeah. And now we are defining the requests. So remember the code which we made in Request Builder? This is going to be very similar to it. The request has a coordinate reference system and a bounding box. It's the same bounding box which we had in the Request Builder and in the browser. Then it has a data filter, but the data filter is not like directly input. It's taken from slots, right? Slot is an array, so the first item in the array is going to be slot 0. And the next one is going to be slot 1. The data type is Sentinel to L2A, just like we selected in the Request Builder. And the output is again going to be the same thing which we had in the Request Builder with this number of pixels. Okay, we want 2 responses. One of them is going to be called default, and it's a TIFF. And the other one is called burn mask, and that's a TIFF as well. Okay, the evalscript which we use is the evalscript. And then this is the authorization part once again, where we are referring to the client which we just created. And then what we do here is we take the file which is sent to us as a result, you know, the tar file, which we had in the Request Builder, and we are writing it to our personal storage, right? If we run this cell, let's run this cell. Again, it runs very quickly because we still haven't touched any data. We are just defining the request. When we say run the request, this is what we are going to run. Okay? And now we get the authorization token, and we run the request for the time slots. So this is taking some time, because this is when the actual communication with the server is taking place. For every time slot with that variable, we are running the request again and again, right? And what you see here in your files is that these tar files are being downloaded to your personal storage. I have posted a link in the chat. We have the notebook in a GitHub repository. And there, it's possible to copy the cells again one by one. And that should allow you to have a clean version. So if I just copy this, and I copy it over into my browser, okay, so if you have successfully run it, you should have these tar files here in your storage. And now what we are going to do is just we open all these tars and we extract the TIFF files inside using this little tar file library. And we do this for every time slot, right? And then it's going to print us the file name. So for every slot, we have a file called default.tiff and a file called burnmask.tiff, right? Okay, and now we are starting to create plots. So we are creating a plot with 6 images just to show the different images in the time series. So if you run this cell, then it's taking the information from the default.tiff files, and this is what you get. Okay, so this is with the burn mask visualization. you see the burnt area visualization. So it's red if it's burnt, and otherwise it's true color. Now we do the same thing for the other files, the ones with the ones and zeros. Right? This cell is doing the same. It's just taking the files from the burn mask.tif inside these little files here in your storage. Right? This is what you get. First, you have no burnt area, then more and more. Here you have a bit less because of clouds, right? This image is cloudy. And then this is your final burnt area. Okay? Now we make a small calculation. What's the easiest way to quantify the burnt area? Is to count the pixels. And now that we have all pixels as either 0 or 1, we can just add them all up. And then we are getting a number which is the area. But because it's 10 by 10 meters, we have to divide it by 1,000,000. And then we are getting the area in square kilometers. So this is just a very, very simple calculation to go from the raster to the area. We run this one as well. This is just the definition of a calculation, so there's no output. You just see the number in the top left showing that it's working. Okay? And now our array, this burnt area number, is going to be the result of reading the burn mask from this file and calculating burnt area with this little procedure here. And then we are printing the result. And we are doing this for each of the slots, right? So this is a for loop where we are running this little calculation for each of the images. And this is the result, right? So this is already a quantitative result. We are getting actual numbers from the API request by processing the images directly in Jupyter. And then the final thing is to create a very simple line chart, again with matplotlib. So we are defining a plot. It's taking the information from this array here, and we have a visualization. So this is what we did for the processing of burnt area. And now what you can do is, if you go over to the chat, I have another area of interest and another time frame. So if you take this bounding box and the dates from the 8th and the 23rd of September 2024, and you change the parameters in the Jupyter Notebook, then this will run for a wildfire in Hungary. And you can do the same calculation. So normally, if you have a Jupyter Notebook that you like, this is how you adapt it to your local study area. You change the study area, you change the date, and then you run the whole thing again. You will have to change the number of time slots because this is then not 5 time slots, just 3, but you can work through this. We start by copying this notebook to our own storage. Go copy, and then back over here in my storage. Maybe you want to create a folder for it. I am calling it Wildfire Hungary. I can paste the notebook in. I can rename it. And now I'm opening it. You don't need all the junk in the beginning. You only need the Jupyter Notebook part, right? This is where you start. Right, so you have dates and the bounding box. There's no direct link. We import the dependencies again. We set up the credentials, including the client ID and the client secret. We do the thing with the authorization token. And now we have the time slots, right? So we want to change them from 2023 to 2024. Okay, here's a link in the browser. So this is the burnt area. If you take a look at the screen for a moment in the browser, and then what are the images that we have? We have one for the 23rd, the 18th, the 13th, and the 8th. So on the 8th, it should be August, right? 14th of August, no fire. 24th, still no fire. Okay. Did I get the dates wrong? 3rd, 8th, and 23rd. Yes, so the time slots, they should be September the 3rd, September the 8th, and September the 23rd. Yes. So I'm changing the dates now, September 3 to 4, September 8 to 9, and 23 to 24. Okay, I'm deleting the other ones. Let's run this cell. So now we have these 3 time slots. Are we changing the evalscript? We're not. We're keeping it. We could adjust the thresholds if we wanted, but we're not doing that now. And now, in this request, we want to change the bounding box, right? This is the parameter we are changing. Again, going over to here. This is my bounding box. Now we are running the request itself. All goes well, we should have tar files in here, right? 1, 2, and the 3rd one is going to pop up soon. Now we are opening the files again. Yes, it contains the default diffs and the burn mask.diffs. And see, now here we have the plot from this different study area, burnt area here, and then increasing all the way to this. We run the same thing with the burn mask, with the 0s and the 1s. And then we can quantify the area. And we can print a graph. Oh, because it shouldn't be 0 to 5, it should be 0 to 3. Time series. Our Sentinel Hub, there's an introduction to Sentinel Hub API-s notebook. And this one shows you how to do a catalog request where you get the list of images, a process API request where you get the picture, and then a statistics API request where you have the same, again, will have an evalscript, but as part of the request, you define the time interval, the aggregation interval, and the statistics that you use. Those are probably the defaults. And then the result is going to look like this. It's again a JSON with the date and the min, max, the mean, the max, the standard deviation, and the sample count. And then if you're interested in area, you could use the sample count. And then you can push this to an array or a table using NumPy again, and then you would have a graph. So this is how you can do it directly in an API request without this little trick with opening the files and counting the pixels. If you want to do in QGIS, you can also run the request in a for loop for the individual time slots and create the output files only with the burn mask. Okay. Somebody's asking whether we are going to go through the notebook in detail. The plan was not to do this because after the break we're going into OpenEO, so a different API family. But there is a video webinar about this notebook. So on the Copernicus Dataspace Ecosystem YouTube channel, there's a playlist about Introduction to Sentinel Hub APIs. Over here, there is one about the catalog API and a separate video about the statistical API, which is referring to this notebook that I showed here. And so it's possible to sort of follow through that notebook step by step using that video.